Welcome, everybody, to Resilient Now podcast. So happy you're here. So, today we don't have a guest speaker. I'm the guest speaker. I want to tell you why this is here. So, there's a lot of people going through things in the world, in life, that are hard, that are, terrible and tragic. And we just don't know what to do at that moment when those things are happening. But chances are there's somebody who's gone through what you're going through right now. And I'm hoping to have that person for you on my website, or you can listen to on a podcast on Apple or Spotify or YouTube. There's somebody who's on the other side of that, and I want you to meet that person. It's important to me that you meet that person and you listen to that person maybe 10, 20 times. It's not going to take the pain away, but it might give you a different perspective. It might lessen the pain. It might, give you some tools that how to act next or what to do next. And sometimes it's doing nothing, but just listening to somebody who's actually been exactly through what you've been through, I think is so, so valuable. So that's why I created this. So we have a place to come. And even me, like I've heard some of the speakers that I've actually just recorded and interviewed, and some of them have like given me a good day just by like listening to them, it given me a different perspective on things. So that's why Resilient Now podcast is created. So I'm the guest, and I'm going to talk about something I really don't want to talk about, but I'm going to because it's about being honest and it's about sharing your experience, strength, and hope. And I don't know, I'm not embarrassed, but it's weird. So my story, if you've heard my story, I was left alone between just the ages of 8 to 13, me and my brother, and we lived alone. We were like little animals. My mom didn't live with us. She only saw us a couple times a year. And then I was taken away from my mom. I lived in different foster homes. My brother got adopted. And then I moved to LA and California with an alcoholic aunt who drank a lot. I had blackouts. So anyway, I just didn't have a very good foundation for a lot of things. So what happened was I met somebody who introduced me to a 12-step program, and my life changed. And I started taking contrary action. I started being of service. I started living in the moment, not in the past, not in the future. And my life got super good. And actually, I met somebody. It took me a long time. It was like a long time before I met my husband. And we're divorced, by the way, but we had a very dignified divorce, and we are a great team for my son. He's almost done with college, and his wife is great. But I need to tell you a little bit about what happened when my son was born. He was about a month old. I got a call from the police in Miami. I lived in LA. And they said, you need to brace yourself. And I said, okay. He says, I have terrible news for you. And I had just changed my number. And the policeman was like, oh, it took me so long to find you. I'm like, okay, so what is it? And they said, well, your mother, she was murdered. I'm like, what? And I wasn't even, this is a mother who left me. This is a mother I reconciled with in my 20s off and on, because it was really hard to be around her. And I made a decision when I got pregnant. I called my mentor and I said to her, I don't think I can talk to my mom on the phone while I'm pregnant, because she still pushes those buttons. And I try to cover the buttons, but she pushes them. And she says, you don't have to. She says, why don't you just take care of the baby that you're carrying and not talk to her? And I'm like, okay. So that was a decision. I did send her a picture of the baby when the baby was born. So it was a month after the baby was born. I got a call from the policeman, and they told me my mom was murdered. But not only was she murdered, she lived with a boyfriend. He was murdered too. And the person who murdered them killed himself. So it was 2 homicides and a suicide. And they were in my mother's car. My mother was driving in Miami. And it was terrifying to me because I actually knew the person who killed her. Years in one of my reconciliations with her, she came to visit me in LA and stayed with me for the weekend and brought that person. It was a tenant in her house. And he stayed with me and her for the weekend. And I was super kind to him and really nice to him. And I remember we went like roller skating in Santa Monica Pier or something. He was younger. But anyway, I think my mom thought she was going to set me up. I'm like, absolutely not. No. So they left, and that was the end of it. I didn't hear more about him ever, except that he was a tenant. And then my mom was in several lawsuits and things like that. I don't know, they had something going on. But that's not the point. The point is that I had a child that was a month old, and I got this call. And I knew I had to go and I had to bury my mother. And I didn't really have to because my mother really wasn't there for me, but I've learned that that's not how things are. You always act better than what you feel. And that cry when the policeman told me that, like an animal, scream, I knew that like I was connected to my mother. At the end of the day, she's my mother. So I went to her place and, took my son, and my ex-husband went with me, took a couple weeks off, but he had to get back to work after 2 weeks. And I stayed with my brother's adopted family. And I remember the baby was only a month old. So I'd be pumping and then I'd leave for the day and be gone all day, trying to get her like, her place packed or give stuff away. My mom was she was obsessive compulsive, and she was a hoarder. Yeah, she had like bags and bags of new clothes with tickets. She had medications she never took. My mom wasn't an alcoholic or a pill popper, but doctors gave her a lot of medications that she did not take. She literally had black bags full of medications through all the years. And I discovered a lot of weird things that I really didn't need to know. She had a few properties. My ex-husband was like, we don't want any of this. We don't need any of this. We just had a baby. In a few months, you're going to go back to work. And, we pretty much walked away from everything. There was like a little bit of litigation with some of her stuff. And then my mom left a will for me and my grandmother, not my brother, but my grandmother. So that was an ordeal. And I went to Colombia to tell my grandmother to sign things, and she had some sort of dementia or something, and she wouldn't sign anything. So that, her items went to the state. So I tried my best, I try to be the daughter that I was, that I know that I'm supposed to be. But that was hard, having a newborn, pumping and leaving him, because I had to leave him during the day because it was at least an hour away from where I was staying. And I had to be around family because if I wasn't, how was I going to take care of this baby? So, we got my mother buried. I buried her in a beautiful plot, and I buried her boyfriend with her. I never spoke to the family. I had a mentor and they wanted to talk to me. The gentleman who killed her, his family wanted to talk to me. And my mentor's like, there's nothing for you to talk about with them. And it wasn't because I was like, resentful or mad. They're like, there's nothing there for you to discuss. And I just didn't talk to them. But I do pray for them. And I don't know what happened there. I don't know what made him, do that. I'll never know. But it's funny how your past comes back and haunts you sometimes. But I'm very lucky because I had tools, and I actually where I was working, I had a really good team, and they were very supportive of what was happening. And they let me take the time to talk to attorneys when I came back to work for my maternity leave. I was very supported at work through this, I have to say. So I was very lucky that way. And I was married, so I did have a husband, but he has his own business, and he was very much into his business, his, partners and in business. So a lot of this was me, just being resilient and taking care of this child. And then, I was able to afford nannies and things like that. So that was very lucky. And when I went back to work, but having this like mother murdered, and every time people ask me about my mom, I say, oh, she was in a car accident. And I literally don't want to explain this. And I don't think I have to. And she wasn't an accident, but it's a little bit more detailed than that. And it was really hard. And I remember, she had a wake. I set up a wake from her. Some people came, not that many. And I just remember looking at her and just crying and knowing that my mom was affected. I think my mom was affected by alcoholism, even though she wasn't a drinker. I think, I don't know if anybody knows about the disease of alcoholism, but it affects emotions and the way people, raise their kids and the way people treat their kids, and the kids get affected. And that was me. So my mother, yes, she didn't take care of me. She wasn't the best mom. She picked a guy over her kids. She did, but I don't think she could have done it any other way. I think her obsessions in her head were so bad. That she couldn't do it any other way. And there's a part of me that thinks that my mother's in peace now, because I remember when I did talk to my mother in my 20s, I remember her calling me and always crying, and she talked about God all the time. And sometimes I think I know God gives me grace all the time, but sometimes I think God just calls you home. When he sees you're just in so much pain, he just calls you home. And it happens, I guess, in different ways. But, my mother did have a connection with God, but my mother was, I hate to use the word insane because I'm not a doctor, but she had a lot of problems, mental problems. So for me, I didn't want to tell this story. So having a newborn, taking care of that baby, because I didn't have the nannies necessarily right away. And flying to Miami and just dealing with my mom's estate and the crazy stuff that was happening in Miami at the time. It was really hard, and I had to use every single resilient bone in my body to do it, but I did, and I got through it. And every now and then, when I'm, now I live in Miami, but I do go visit her grave sometimes, and I'll do a prayer. I'll go there, and I know that I don't owe my mother anything, but she was my mother, and at the end of the day, I want to be the daughter that I'm supposed to be. And just because she's dead doesn't mean I don't have to go visit her, and I can. And if I don't want to, I don't have to. No, I don't do it because it's an obligation. I do it because that's the kind of person I want to be. I want to forgive my mother because I will never know how, I'll never walk in my mother's shoes. I'll never know the pain she was in. It could have been, super great leaving your kids for all those years to be with a man. I think eventually that got to her and made her crazy. I don't know. I don't even want to say that. I just know that I have to be resilient, and I was. And I think that's why when I got divorced, I told my mentor, I said, maybe it's better if Ian, my son just lives with, his dad full time, because maybe I don't have good tools. And she's like, no, no, no. And I love to say that my son is done so well. He's finishing college. We have a great relationship. He's super smart. People come up to me and tell me all the time how educated and wonderful he is, and polite and courteous. And this was just because I got help. I was able to plant a new tree. So I came from a tree that wasn't so good, had a lot of bad apples. But, with the help of God and some strong women, I was able to take one of those apples and plant a new tree. And I do work hard. I give it sunlight, I give it water, I do whatever it needs to do. And for me, that's like getting up in the morning and doing a gratitude list and, helping people and, giving back. And checking in, am I doing things? Am I too hungry? Am I too tired? Am I too lonely? There's all those have solutions. If I'm tired, go to sleep. If I'm hungry, eat something healthy. Or am I eating a bunch of junk food that's going to make me have anxiety and brain fog? And so there's a lot of things I can do. I do like meditation. I do like podcasts that are positive. I do like hearing people who get through things, because it always, I don't know, it fuels me. It's like making deposits in a spiritual bank account. And then sometimes you need to take a big, withdrawal. So it's good to have a lot of deposits. One day at a time, one moment at a time, let go and let God, first things first. Those are slogans, and I actually have them on my website. So if you ever need something to just, go on my website and look at resources, and there's a lot of the things I've used through the years that have gotten me where I am today. And I'm really grateful that I have the life that I have today. I don't take it for granted, not ever. Things can change. So I work really hard. I believe that, there's definitely that childhood in me that if I don't do the things that I'm supposed to do, take care of myself spiritually, mentally, physically, things can come back. And I don't want that ever to happen. And people tell me they're not. I've gone to professionals, they're like, you're doing great, and you're amazing and all this stuff. But every day is a brand new day, and every day I got to work hard to stay sane and take redeemable actions and be a good person and be the woman that God wants me to be, not who I want to be. It's who God wants me to be. So I do the things I have to do to be that woman. And sometimes it's 3 steps back and 4 steps forward, or like that. But it's always, I'm always trying. So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to this story. And there'll be other speakers. And I'm just really happy that you're here. And remember, for you all, that the best is yet to come. One day at a time, make it an amazing day. You have tools. I have tools. We can get through life. We can be resilient. Bye. Bye.